Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavati Tamastu Mavivishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace. And welcome. We're working on the complete works of Swami Abhedananda. We're on our relationship to the Absolute. I'm Swami Abhedananda. This is
Atmatatunanda, at your service. Where will we start tonight? Good evening.
We're starting on page 582. I believe we stopped mid paragraph here. Why did I start at the top of the page? And we're leaving out some of the extra thes.
And one more time, because this is getting close to the synthesis, our relation to the absolute. Wow, all right.
In fact, he does not create something out of nothing, as the dualistic believers describe him. He's going through the various systems of philosophy. He is not merely the efficient cause of the universe, but is both the efficient and the material cause. Nimitta in upadana karana.
The efficient cause is the carpenter, right? And the material cause is the lumber. So he's saying God's both the carpenter and the lumber. Okay.
Only if it's an efficient carpenter. Yes, all right. He is our very nature, and nature is his body. Nature is nothing but the divine energy which forms the body of God. His physical body is the gross phenomenal universe, which we perceive with our five senses. He is the soul of the universe. His mind is the cosmic mind, which is the sum total of all our minds. And our relationship to the cosmic mind is like the relationship that exists between the eddies and the eternal current of the cosmic mind. Our minds are like so many eddies or whirlpools in the eternal current of the cosmic mind, which is running and flowing from eternity to eternity. Our individual wills or desires are like the rays of the sun, and the divine will or desire contains all these rays. That is, all the rays of the individual wills or desires emanate from that one source, like the rays of the sun, which emanate from that self-effulgent, luminous, and heavenly body. We cannot be away from him, as we are living in him. As, for example, when we do anything, when we walk on the streets or perform any action, if we think that God is dwelling in us and we are like his instruments, and these instruments of the human bodies are guided and governed by the divine will, then we cannot do anything wicked or wrong. Then it would be impossible for us to commit any wrong or wicked act, because at that time we shall be conscious of the omnipresent divine being that can never commit anything wrong. And that consciousness is more real to us than our present consciousness, because the present consciousness of our individual self is separate from another such consciousness, which is separate from the universe. We are living only for our individual body, and everything that is related to the individual body is very narrow and limited. This limited and narrow idea or consciousness cannot bring any happiness to us. In fact, this consciousness of the individual self, which is generally accepted as separated from the rest of the universe, is the result of ignorance and self-delusion. But in truth, we cannot exist in this universe being separate from each other and also from the universe.
Wow, this is so interesting, Swami. Here we are talking about 1920. And, I think that's almost as good a date as you might want to talk about the real beginning of the future. Yes, Einstein came up with his great equation in 1905. Surely these are important things. But I don't know about you, this last year, 2020, took me a while to bring my feet, even say the year 2001, which was the beginning of the 21st century, from the 20th century to the 21st century. But by this time, it was almost as if the outlines of this new 20th century, 1920, were getting clear, and we're quite obviously in a new era. And yet, I find this page so deep, Swami, because it goes back to musings, which may be universal, that were occurring in the West among mystically inclined philosophers. And one of the most important to me in this context is this fellow called Plotinus. And you could say that Plotinus was the leader, the spiritual energy of the school called Neoplatonism, Plato's mysticism gotten from Socrates, an illumined soul. And Neoplatonism was the last great efflorescence, probably, of the Greek world of philosophy, mystical. So even Plotinus, you see, who had this school, it wasn't just a school in which people were listening to somebody orate and give lectures. It was a way of life, which is what mysticism is. And he thought about it a lot. And he said, in effect, he must have said something like the ruminations that we think we hear about the Indian philosophers way back when. And Plotinus is saying, well, if God is perfect, why the universe? Because he doesn't need it, perhaps within his own subjective interior, the ideal of perfection. Why create this universe? Or why do we think that we see it this way? So he came up with a beautiful description, which has lasted all these hundreds of years, that the cosmos and everything in it is like the rays of the sun. They're merely an overflowing, if you will, like coffee, you keep pouring, comes out of the cup. And he called them, beautiful word, emanations. So they're by no means separate from the sun. And in one sense, they're not in excess, but out of love, out of enthusiasms. And the Indian folks came out with the idea that out of play, lila, God's doing it for sport. There are other ways of looking at it, that we come out, we go back, we find our way back to the infinite consciousness, which we kind of forget. But that's pretty big stuff. And then he says, to such effect, and this is perhaps the study of a lifetime, this limited and narrow idea or consciousness that everything is related to the individual separate from the universe cannot bring any happiness to us. And eventually, searching here, searching there, was that your song? Was it searching here, searching there? One of the Rabindra's songs. We come to the awareness somehow, the hint, and then the fuller and fuller awareness that it's an infinite alone that is our happiness. Now, the last thing that I think, this is three big things to me in this whole paragraph, but after all, it is a kind of a synthesis chapter. The last sentence, if we remember, something of that was, but in truth, in truth, we cannot exist in this universe being separated from each other and also from the universe. Since I didn't see this coming, I'm going to ask your help. Einstein said practically the same thing. And it's really pretty amazing, because old Al Baby was a man of many dimensions. As a matter of fact, he spent the last years of his life, it's quite interesting, working, I would say, primarily for peace. Of course, he was still trying to get the grand unified field theory, one theory. which I suspect may not be possible until one achieves one's union with God, what they call Nirvikalpa Samadhi in India. But this phrase, first of all, one just like Plotinus, and then this one in the middle, which those of us who have as an article of faith, the great words of our sacred document, the Declaration of Independence, governments are instituted among men to secure these unalienable rights, and among them, God-given incidentally, among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a great ideal. It's probably the heart and soul of our being an American. And my friends, speaking humorously a little from a Vedanta perspective, certainly from one's own perspective, we have no idea how to find it. It's really not in an ice cream cone, even a double scoop ice cream cone. And as I like to say, that God gave to the Down syndrome children, our sisters and brothers, 3 scoops of ice cream. The extra dollop is love. You see, they have a tremendous amount of love. But the happiness, sure, we feel something. It looks like this is a hint of the deepest happiness and joy, which can only be found in what we call the transcendental state, or some degree of superconsciousness as we're working towards God consciousness, the love and light of God present in the heart of the mystic, union with God, as the Western mystics call it. So, Swami, we're off to the races. My goodness. Help me remember Einstein next week. I'll try to write it down. I think you'd be surprised. Now, did you know that they asked Albert Einstein to be the first president of Israel? Mm-hmm. Mm. And the man that took his place was one of the giants, as I feel, of the statesmen of this recent period of human history, David Ben-Gurion. Charles Carter met him, you know, just coincidentally, sitting almost in a lawn chair on the beach or something. I mean, something as simple as that. And he found himself sitting next to this warm-hearted, grand man with the universal vision, David Ben-Gurion, grandfather, you could say, of Israel. Now, think of our present existence, which is a relative one. In other words, you got the relative plane out here, like the solar system or even the galaxy, like a record, you know, a whole phonograph record go around like this. The relative plane and all of the hints and the joys and even the sorrows, everything helping us one way or another to get closer to God during a lifetime. And then there's the transcendental plane experienced within by the sages and the seers and the aspirants. So a relative plane. And that means that our existence depends, our present existence, which is a relative one, and that means our existence depends upon the existence of everything else. Well, it really does. I mean, I've never heard it put so simply, but the plants, you know, we cannot really process much of the mineral kingdom for food. Salt might be a simple exception of that. But plants capture sunlight. And our beloved John Dobson, the astronomer, philosopher that was from Northern California, just a total wonderful Vedantan, who loved science and helped us see the hints of Brahman peeking through. He said that we're all walking around on canned sunlight, which means plants. Because either we ate plants, or animals ate plants, or the oil that was in the ground that sustained us for years and now it's killing us. But all of it is canned sunlight. So anyway, sure, we're dependent upon everything else. For instance, we're sitting here. The very existence of ourselves in this room depends upon the existence of the room. And this room, again, cannot exist if there be no city of Los Angeles. Well, look where he was talking from. That's all he tried to tell us that. And the city of Los Angeles cannot exist if there be no United States. And the United States cannot exist if there be no earth, and the earth cannot exist if there be no sun, no solar system, and the sun cannot also exist if there be no other systems around which this whole solar system is moving. Now, Swami, I'm not good at dates. How did he get that? By, say, 1920. Was Hubble already aware of that? Must have
Well, we
been.
certainly knew about the solar system and the things going around the solar system. I think
But the
Hubble was
galaxy.
a little later. Yeah,
There you got the
it was a
galaxy.
little later.
Well,
I mean, they knew we were in a galaxy, yes. I mean,
they knew we were in a galaxy before Hubble found it. And he found it right on that mountain. We can see it up there.
well, he found other galaxies.
Mount Wilson. But he discovered that the other galaxies, which was not known up until that time, are outside of our own.
Yeah, but we knew about our own galaxy.
Yeah, I think that's right. So there you go. He's got it. So the whole solar system is moving. So you see that our present existence is so intimately related with the rest of the universe that when we try to separate our existence from the rest of the universe, we delude ourselves and commit a great mistake or error. And that lack of humility, which is not a smallness, but the lack of the ability to think big, is one of the most delimiting and strife-causing problems of the human species, and it's called egocentricity. William James got this pretty clear. How about the rugged individualist? That's what America thinks is built on. Big, sturdy guy, Teddy Roosevelt, whatever. I'm a rugged individualist. I'm a self-made man. I did it all that I'm providing for the family, or whatever. All circles around me. I did it. You have to breathe. As a matter of fact, you can go without water for a certain amount of time, not too long. I'm going to say maybe 3 or 4 days. You go without food quite much longer than that, according to Gandhi's actual experience, experimentation. But we can't go without air for very long at all, most of us for a very short time. So molecules from the outside world are coming into this individualistic thing that's sealed off from everything else. And actually, we are composed every day of new molecules from outside. So we're literally one with the environment. And that's sort of a new thing. We didn't quite feel that very much until frankly, the mystics and people like Whitehead and all began to realize the whole universe, if you'll just go into a little bit, is much more like, in quotes, an organism. Huh? Because it's relations of energy than it is like a machine. We're still treating it like a machine, in which you are the only percipient subject and everybody else is a cog, an objective cog, part of your machine. The earth, other people, employees, everybody is just something to be, directed and just part of a machine. Well, it ain't that way, we're finding out. So now, we're almost home free on this one. But on the contrary, if we think that our consciousness depends upon the whole universe, think of it, what we've done. The humility comes from extending our understanding, seeing the greatness in other people now in the whole universe, and we're a part of that. But on the contrary, if we think that our consciousness depends upon the whole universe, that is, if we try to realize that our individual consciousness is a consciousness of only one part, then we see that the part is closely related to other parts, and ultimately to the stupendous whole, which is the absolute, capital A. Don't you just love the way this guy writes? Whoa, this is our Abhedananda, man, in L.A.
All right, and also Dobson pointed out that the mass of the proton seems to depend on its separation from all the other protons in the observable universe, which again indicates that we're all interconnected. Every proton has to have all those other protons in the universe in order for it to have the mass that it does, according to that theory, of course. But I think you verified that with Feynman, and he agreed that that was a plausible explanation if the expansion rate's the critical number, but that's still up for debate.
I just love you to meet our friend John Dobson. He was a monk for 23 years in Northern California Vedanta Society. And then he began to see that by helping the world to make their own telescopes and see this firsthand, you could get a real firsthand aha awareness of the all, of the absolute. So all of these things came to the same energy conclusion. If you have an undifferentiated energy, let's say in a universe, and you squeeze that energy down and squeeze it down and push it down to the size of an electron, the mass of the electron is the work that you have to do to bring infinity, as it were, down to this tiny little seeming separate part. Same thing with a proton. Same thing with all of the kinds of energy that we have. They all balance out and have a kind of great equilibrium. The absolute peeking through. Swami, this is so incredible. This is kind of like the crescendo of the symphony.
So we must not live for ourselves, but must live for the rest of the universe. We are here to help in the onward progress not only of our own individual self, but also of the whole humanity, of the whole race, of all living things. We must not stop simply after doing something that will help our own people and our own nation, but we must go on doing things that will help not only our own nation, but also all nations, not only all human beings, but also all living creatures, the lower animals, and even the plants. So the life of a great Savior is for humanity, and more than humanity, for the lower animals, and for all creation, for the whole creation. Each individual must learn that one truth, that we are the servants of all creation, and not servants of a particular nation. Philanthropy is narrow when compared to the service of the creation, and that is our ideal. The moment we realize our relation with the Absolute, we cannot live within the limitations of our selfish motives, selfish ideals, and individual consciousness. We must transcend all these, and this is the purpose of religion. And here we're all just a couple of days away from Earth Day, so it's a nice...
Yes, that was what, 2 days ago. Yeah. And we're still in it, actually. Friends, do you feel it? I feel it. That's what meetings, camp meetings, and you know, there's a meeting here tonight. There's a meeting here tonight. I can tell you by your friendly face, there's a meeting here tonight. Hallelujah. Don't you feel a kind of a declaration of independence? This is huge, and I think he's made his case. It's palpable. We're citizens of the whole universe. Not only that, by the air we breathe, by the relations, by the expanding relationships of, you know, the place and the room and the earth and LA and the I, we are one with the universe. This is actually a spiritual declaration of independence. And Vedanta will brook no limitations. Believe it or not, as a spiritual path, as a glory path, from way under BC, they are saying you are the universe. And even beyond. So we don't have the right to hang our head. We don't have the right to just ignore and pull it all inside. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Much money, much food, much whatever. Assimilate everything. Because it's all us. Why should we love our neighbor as ourselves, as Jesus said? Swami Abhedananda, the founder of this place, should point out, because our neighbor is ourself. And I think he's made his case. Like a lawyer.
Before we go on too far, another thing to mention would be Ken Wilber points out that people's level of consciousness can also be measured to a certain extent by their circle of care and compassion. And so, you start out caring about you, and then your family, and then your tribe, and then your, maybe your city state, and then it grows to the nation. And we're having to move now. We're through ecology and ecological problems, of course, to a circle of care and compassion that includes the entire globe. So that was an interesting idea too about how consciousness evolves that way.
Oh, it's a huge thing, and it's all about family. Don't you notice when you get your own nation from your own group and whatnot? You know what a nation really is? It's a gene pool. It's an extended family. That's why people within some kind of parameters, within a different country, they tend to look alike. Now, we can tell something of where people might have come from or do today, the various nations of Europe. I'm sure in India they can tell whether they're from South India, North, East, West, West. Families. And the whole problem is that it's not good enough. These are titanic concepts, and they really do require some rearranging of the furniture, unless every human being on Earth is recognized by us, DNA, whatever you want to put it, as a member of our family. It's not enough, because families that are self-centered will fight. Now, there's a grand river of faith, of which the highest mystics have reached the highest levels, and today are some of the most wonderful mystics in the world. And I'll just put it gently. For example, they come from a place like Iran. That's what we say in the South and Middle West, Iran. Ecstatic, loving, wonderful, peaceful, considerate, oriented towards including people and making you feel you're one of their own. And one of the grand rivers of faith is torn at another energy level by dissension. Two great groups. What are they? They're family extensions. They have to do with something that happened 2 years after their great prophet lived. Family quarrel. You know about the Serbo-Croatian language? It is Serbo-Croatian. That means basically these people are one people. Same thing with the Irish and the Scots, MacDonald or McGee. They're all one people. Chromosomes. They just happened at one point, different subfamilies, to develop different ways of loving God. How can we be angry with anyone because she or he has a different way of loving God? But the Macs of the Irish and the Scotsmen, though they're cousins and they're rather close cousins at that, the Gaelic that Scots people speak was called Irish by the English that came over the northwestern part of the islands. And the Serbo-Croats, some of them of one great river of faith, some of another, is not good enough. It won't do. We cannot go through this every 400 or 500 years, that family members tearing each other apart, even within a country. It just won't do anymore. So unless every member of the human species you know, at least, literally is your cousin, it's true. There's what you call very small genetic drift among the human species. Compared to, say, dogs. You realize every dog you ever saw in this world is a Canis familiaris, friendly hound. They're all the same genus species. Well, by golly, if we're cousins, and if we look this way, why can't we act like it? The earth is just not permitting us to do anything else anymore. Okay, Bubby. So that last sentence or two was incredible. The moment we realize our relation with the absolute, capital A, we cannot live. We cannot live We're in the middle of the pandemic, my friends. Almost 1 million Americans, as we speak tonight, will have become exposed. We cannot live with the population, the environmental sustainability, within the limitation of our selfish motives, selfish ideas, and individual consciousness. We must transcend. We must transcend all these, and that is the purpose of religion. And that, my friends, in a very quiet, modest way, is the salutation of Vedanta and the clarion call of our Swami Vivekananda. Now, what do I mean by a religion? Well, it is not a set of doctrines and dogmas. It transcends rather the limitations of doctrines and dogmas. It is the realization of the higher self, the absolute. See, now he's going beyond the cosmos. And you know this cosmos, man, pretty awesome thing. They got many more galaxies now than they used to think they did because there are lots of littler ones. You see what I'm saying? Maybe the same number of stars, but divided up a little differently. So now he's saying, yeah, well, you got that business about being one with the universe, didn't you? Yeah, I caught that. Direct declaration of independence. Now I'm saying it's the realization of the higher self, the absolute, with a capital A. So we must learn to live in and through the absolute, because if the absolute is the one stupendous whole, oh, how I love his phrase, then how can the parts exist independent of the whole? It would be an impossibility. Now, I know you're not giving me on this one, but in France, which is a place that I feel my heart is somehow centered like on a pillow or something. France is a balance, my friend, between the heart and the head. It's a grand country. I had an experience of the mind in a little chapel in a kind of a monastery in southern France with a Eucharist table, but a very simple one in that particular place. It's kind of like almost a motel for pilgrims. And I realized that if one thing exists in the universe, infinity exists. It happens to be something called the ontological argument. It's an experience. I felt it. That's what he's saying. Absolute stupendous whole, then how can, because if the absolute is the one stupendous whole, then how can the parts exist independent of the whole? It would be an impossibility. And for that reason, Vedanta philosophy tells us, try to seek the absolute first. This is in quotes. And the absolute is described in the Upanishad. Then we get all of the Sanskrit, which is related to English, believe way back, grandmother tongue.
I have a translation of that.
Do you? Oh boy, listen to him right at his fingertips.
That from which these beings are born, that by which, when born, that from which these beings are born, that by which, when born, they live, that into which they enter, they merge. Seek to know that. That is Brahman.
Wow, and I'm still learning English. That's funny. That's it. Look at that. He looks like the cat that swallowed the canary sometime. Isn't that that's what we're talking about. It's all inside. Wow. I'm glad because there's no other translation here. That's what it is. So the absolute is that from which all animate and inanimate objects have come into existence, and every inanimate object, so-called, has an inside energy seen from inside as experience. The rock has an experiential relationship, the tree, everything. So it's really a question as to whether the word inanimate is even valuable. So the absolute is that for which all the animate and inanimate objects have come into existence, in which they live, and to which they return at the time of dissolution. They are it, the material and the efficient cause. It's all Brahman-like. spinning the universe, the spider, the web out of herself and taking it back in. All right, know it and realize it. These Vedantins, they won't quit. There's your manager, your baseball manager. I talk of St. Thomas of Lasorda for the Dodgers here in L.A. He's saying, know it, comma, and realize it. The whole thing. And Vivekananda says the same thing. Be up and doing. It is the Alpha and Omega. He has those words capitalized in Greek. There's a fascinating thing there. Alpha is the first letter in the Greek alphabet. Omega is the last. I made a chart once of Hebrew and Greek and English letters. And of course our alphabet, the alphabet of the Western world, I guess the whole world, is from the Phoenician, the Semitic, the Hebrew tribes, which gave us our alphabet, first two letters, Aleph, Beth. But the last, it's a shorter alphabet. The Greek alphabet's a little longer. Alpha, Beta, Aleph, Beth, alphabet. Even Indian Devanagari is from, it's called Brahmani. It's come from the script of ancient language, extended over a wide area, that Jesus spoke. It's very interesting. The Devanagari script, I think you will agree, looks a lot more like Hebrew than it does the Greek letters and the Roman letters. And it was given to India, Brahmani, pretty late, maybe 1000 AD. But nevertheless, this is part of that everything being united again. Know it and realize it. It is the Alpha and Omega. So what is the last letter in Greek? Omega. Starts with A, Om. The Greeks knew about Om. The spectrum of sound from the deep parts of one's heart, one's soul, right through the Om. Om. So something's going on here that's pretty big. They must have known of each other. It is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and end of this phenomenal world. We've come from the Absolute, and again we shall go back to the Absolute. If the whole phenomenal universe be destroyed, and if the Earth is suddenly changed into a nebulous mass by coming in contact with some other planet or with a comet, then where shall we be? We shall go back to the causal state, a much more interior dimension, like concentric circles, deeper into the center of our being. We shall remain there, and nothing will be lost. There is no such thing as destruction of anything. Physics, John Dobson, matter and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So destruction means reversion to the causal state. And then he's got some wonderful translation here from Sanskrit there. I mean, these people found it out all the way under BC. We can never be destroyed. Our body might be dissolved and disintegrate, or might go into its original elementary conditions, but from those elementary conditions, other forms will rise and continue to live, and the spirit will never die. After the dissolution of this earth, a new world will be created. Boy, doesn't that have a ring to Americans? They said in 1776, Tom Paine said, we have a chance to begin the world all over again, begin the world anew. And oh, my friends, the idealism of the human spirit, wherever you see it, it's a church service, it's an inspiration, it's a cathedral of the universe. You know what they said back then, the veterans? They said, to be alive in 1776 with the ideal of liberty, not just freedom of this, but liberty. He said, to be alive was indeed wonderful. And to be young was very heaven. We have the chance to build the world over again. So a new world is going to rise. And when it even gets better, I mean, he knows where he's going here. He said, after the dissolution of this earth, a new world will be created. Perhaps a new earth and a new solar system and new planets will be framed. And that is the process. This Abhedananda is far more euphoric and poetic than I ever knew. I'm over and out, Swami. It's all yours, man.
So, in this eternal process we are living, it is the play of the Absolute. And in this play of the Absolute, we have lost our bearings. We do not know where we are and what we are doing. We are following like the children who play in the streets, blind man's buff. They shut their eyes and play the part of a blind man without knowing anything and seeing anything. So we are playing the part of ignorant people because we have no better sense. It is the light of religion that opens our sight and enables us to see the things as they are in reality. That religion is not confined to any book. It is the feeling, it is the divine realization, Atmanubhuti. This realization does not mean a mere intellectual apprehension of thought or ideal, but you will have to bring that ideal and to harmonize that ideal with your daily life. If you can do that, you are able to feel the presence of the divinity in you. Then your present consciousness will be transformed into a higher consciousness, which is known as God consciousness, or consciousness of the Absolute. That consciousness of the Absolute means that you will feel the omnipresence of the unchangeable reality of the universe. The unchangeable reality of the universe cannot be many. It is unique and one. It is beyond time and space. It is omnipresent. It is infinite. It cannot be divided into any parts. But at present, we feel that we are the parts of the whole. This idea of the parts of the whole, or the parts related to the whole, is the qualified non-dualistic conception. In this conception, God is qualified by the matter and individual souls. In this qualified non-dualistic concept, the individual souls form a part of the whole being.
Well, I just find this like Handel's, I'm going to be humorous now, Handel's Ninth Symphony. Handel had a tremendous influence on Beethoven. We have a man named Sam Klein who calls him most erudite, maybe our most erudite artist. He's a musician, loves Beethoven. He sees the influence on a synthesis person like Beethoven of Mozart and Bach, and yes, Handel. So Handel got the inspiration to write the Messiah in 2 weeks, right? About
20 days.
20 days. And in a sense, he hardly laid down his pen. This is what he was doing. And we have something. I think we should try to append it to this evening's session. You won't see it right now in the live stream. It's hi out there. It's wonderful. You're making us feel we're one of the part of the universe, one of the universe. But nevertheless, I think we might put on something, the Lord's Prayer, really, that was written 4 years ago by one of the congregation here, Quincy, and within 1 week, a Monday to a Monday, just recently, she cobbled together the video and so forth, and it is a masterpiece. It's holistic because it treats the world as one, and the people as one. Yes, and what we're going through is affecting us all as one.
The name of the video?
The name of the video, good. It's a great prayer. And she takes expansive liberties a little bit, you know. She said, deliver us from fear. And John, the author of the mystical gospel, says, perfect love casteth out all fear. See why love is so spiritual? That is a unifying principle. And if there's only one, Emma, who are you going to be afraid of? This is a path. This is a manifesto. And you know, he just says it in one word. Just do it. Be there now. So, Swami, I think we're coming to the Handel's great Messiah, the end of the culmination of the Messiah, and Beethoven's great culmination of in his Ninth Symphony, Ode to Joy. Unity brings love, brings joy, brings the concept of infinity in existence, consciousness, and bliss. I will give you an illustration. Now we get a chance to catch our breath a minute. Our individual body is composed of minute cells. And each cell has its individuality. In a way, it does. It's got a cell wall if it's an animal. Again, each cell in body has its mind, memory, and a little consciousness. Just as we say, Alfred Northwhite said, an electron is a drop of experience. The cell is a unit. It's a very simple concept, really. And the universe goes up from the cell to the very, very large, you know, and the mega and the mini, and from down to the cell through the microscope. Are you aware, kids, that this virus thing, any virus, but this huge one that's vacuum cleaning the earth, it's just taken the carpet of the world and it's vacuuming it, is so small that you can't see it with a light microscope. You have to have an electron microscope. And then it assumes proportionally the size of a football placed next to an automobile of bacterium. This thing which is really wiping out many of our given assumptions is not even alive. At best, it's half alive. It's like a cougar, fasten your seatbelt, jumping on the back of a horse in Canada that's driving along, you know, the stagecoach. It jumps on the backs of a living organism and then gets enough to replicate. It's a parasite. But it's not very big. But the one cell is really kind of a supreme concept of trying to understand what is all going on here. So it's got its little individuality, it's got its mind, memory, and a little consciousness, and myriads of such cells make up our self-consciousness or mind. There is some kind of synthesis of subjectivity here. Now we are like these minute cells in the cosmic body of God. Why not? We realize that we really are related to the whole universe tonight, physically and everything. We cannot exist being separated from his cosmic body, yet we are playing our parts and are helping toward the expression of the divine will that is at the center. Our beloved St. Augustine, as they pronounce it, St. Augustine, way, 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 way early in the Western civilization, what did he live, 300 something, 4? He understood so many things that he said that God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. In that way, we can find our relation to the absolute, playing our parts and helping toward the expression of the divine will that is at the center. If the center is the absolute, then we are related as the parts to the center. But when we think of the absolute, time and space entirely vanish. And there again, Augustine knew that. Before the cosmos was, he said there was no time and space, just infinity. This is what the big mystics say, and Vedanta has understood this for some time. Because time and space exist only in relation to our thoughts, as they are the modes of our thoughts. Oh boy, I mean, it's just beautiful. Synthesis brings joy. Can't I'm going to say, described time and space as modes of perception. He thought they were ingrained in the brain as potentialities of awareness. But anyway, they don't exist in the infinite. And here they kind of give a penchant to seeing the universe as we do. All right. They entirely vanish when we think of the absolute. Because time is the only relation to our thoughts, as they're the modes of our thoughts, which are no other than our conscious life. Now, what do we mean by time? It means a succession. This is what's playing in the deep end of the pool. One thought rises in our mind and another follows. And the conception of the interval between these two thoughts is time. Take the sunrise as one thought and the sunset as another. And the interval between these two thoughts is time. Divide it into 12 parts, and that would be an hour. In that way, we have got the conception of time. So time cannot exist if you have no thoughts. If you can make your mind absolutely free from thought, you will rise above time. In other words, we're talking about consciousness, yep, with a capital C, but not the consciousness. If we mean by that the concepts of consciousness. This is why the world is not, in the view of Vedanta, and I say mystics who have experience, just a collection of ideas. It's not the contents, the concepts of consciousness. It's consciousness itself, and that is the reality with a capital R. All right. Take the sunrise and they divide it in 12 and so forth. That'll be an hour. That way we've got the conception of time. So it cannot exist if you have no thoughts. If you can make your mind absolutely free from thought, think of this, you will rise above time. Then 5 hours may appear to you as 5 seconds. And Einstein himself, trying to explain relativity of time, for example, said, well, psychologically, you feel that they're different things. You're sitting on a hot stove and it feels like forever. And you're having a really good time, and the whole day, the whole afternoon goes by. You know? All right. So, very, very quickly. Then 5 hours may appear to you as 5 seconds. If you go into that state, which is beyond the thought realm, and sit there for a while, you will feel that it was just like 5 seconds. But in reality, you've been sitting there for hours, according to the watch, in deep meditation. So it will prove to you that you can rise above time and yet remain conscious. I'd like to put in just a plug from our sponsor here. This is a Coca-Cola break and advertisement. Do you realize that all of these people, Abhedananda among them, it's our understanding, had the consciousness of the absolute, capital A. So this boy is writing sometimes beautifully stupendous from personal experience of oneness with the infinite. Swami, it's all yours. What time you got? Are we getting there?
Well, we have about 5 minutes.
Good.
There's
However
a
you want to
question.
spend it,
Oh,
please.
we have a question? Oh, my.
What's the question? Y'all. Do you know the difference between all y'all and all y'all? Y'all is singular, and all y'all is plural in the South, and all y'all's is possessive. I hope all y'all finish all y'all's food before we have to go get up.
So the question is, how can I look inwards?
Yes, yes.
How can I look inwards? That's the question.
Very briefly, I was told by Jacques Cousteau, the great undersea man, that it's more beautiful under the water than it is on top.
Please repeat the question.
Well, the question, yes, if you want to hear it,
How can I look inside?
how can we look inside? How can I look inside? So if it's more beautiful, and I found it to be more beautiful under the water, the breaking of the spectrum I saw one time, and so on more than the fish and whatnot. Well, how about sitting down and closing your eyes? Some people, Americans especially, I suspect, are so stir crazy from this stay home business so you don't give or get the virus that they just can't stand it. They're running out the house. If one sits with one's eyes closed, or even sits in silence and sees the beauty of nature, a happiness occurs. And where is the happiness, the locus? I submit it's your own experience, but it's inside. Love, everything is inside. The inner world is more beautiful, is more splendid, where you close your eyes and pretty soon forget the sounds of the horse's hoofs in the cobblestones of the street. We have one devotee, amen, Vietnam vet. They sprayed Agent Orange to get rid of the trees, the leaves of the trees. They never really figured what it was doing to the boys. Them and us, there's only us. We've met the enemy and the enemy is us. So he's kind of damaged. He'll tell you. I've seen him sitting in the back row of the temple with a big smile on his face. And he comes out and he tells me, meditation is spiritual Disneyland. So you just go to the head Swami from India and find out. It's a good question. Swami, what do you want to do?
Is that it? It's only one
There is
question.
another question. Do you guys want to?
Okay, maybe next time, but give it the question.
Well, yeah, we only have like 2 minutes.
Okay,
so
what's
if
your
it's a
question?
quick question?
Okay.
Okay. The truth is so simple, but why is so difficult to experience it with gratitude?
You mean these are questions? I thought your question. Oh, no wonder they're deep. I live with this boy every morning. All of a sudden, these huge questions. That one's yours, Swami. We'll throw that one to you. He'll give us the culmination of Handel and Beethoven.
Yeah, well,
Just repeat the question.
yeah, the truth is so simple. Why is it so difficult to know it or remember it or
To experience it.
experience it? Yeah, well, unfortunately, our sense organs are designed to go out instead of in. Relating to the last question, how do we look in? Our sense organs are very busy, and of course, it's a survival thing. You see, we're all descendant from organisms that managed to survive, and in order to do that, you have sense organs that go out and experience the world and make sure you don't run in front of a truck or fall off a cliff or do anything else that's damages your genetic material. And so we've been genetically selected to have very good sense organs that look outside for all these things that are going on. And so it's really going against the trend, you could say, to close your eyes and to go within and to hear the inner voice rather than the outer voices. And so that's why it's a struggle. It's a struggle just because of the way we're designed. And I can't make it any simpler than that, unfortunately. I can't tell you how to make it simpler, but I think recognizing that you are bucking the genetic trend, you could say, is very helpful. I mean, it realizes that you really do have to put a great deal of effort into, I think John Dobson called it counter-cheating the genes. Anyway, I think we're ready to sign off.
A wonderful phrase from the Hebrew Scriptures, which the whole world has embraced. Be still. Yes, I see. Be still and know that I am God.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Peace, peace, peace.
Hallelujah, glory land. Hallelujah, amen. Hallelujah, glory land. Revive us again. Good night, everybody.